Good afternoon. I'm Janika Pierce-Tucker, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees and a partner with the law firm of Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister, and it is great to see everybody today. So today, we are here to talk about something that is very important to me because of the obvious, as you can tell. Today's forum is about striving or surviving, the state of the girl. And its focus is on how the girls in Ohio are faring compared to their peers in other states. We'll also hear about some initiatives that are in place to address the challenges our girls face. Today's forum is presented with support from Jones Day, represented by Liza Kessler and her associates, and the Columbus Dispatch, represented by Rita Wolf and her associates, and in partnership with the Girl Scout of Ohio's Heartland and the Women's Fund of Central Ohio. Please join me in thanking our sponsors and partners. Each of our speakers today brings a passion, commitment, and expertise in working to improve the lives of the girls in our great state. Please welcome Tammy Wharton, the CEO of Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland, Yvette McGee Brown, former Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, partner at Jones Day, and former board member of the Girl Scouts, and Teresa Pettis, an executive director at Columbus Public Schools. And the host for our discussion, WBNS 10 TV anchor and journalist, Kristen Hartman. The podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to see a full room because this is really an important topic near and dear to my heart as yours. Every year the Girl Scout Research Institute releases this. It's the State of the Girls Unfinished Business Report. And it's basically a report card on our youngest women, ages 5 to 17. And since it analyzes every state, it shows us how Ohio is doing. It considers a range of factors: economic well-being, physical health and activity, public health and safety, education, emotional health, and extracurricular activities. So if there is a headline for this, the headline is kind of startling. It is girls in Ohio rank 33rd in the United States. 33rd. How many people are in this room are surprised by that? I know I was surprised by that, and I know our panelists are surprised by that. I'm really thrilled that we have the three of you here today, and what I'd like to do as we start is if you could each just introduce yourself and in a couple short sentences, tell me what your connection to Ohio's girls is. Go ahead, Tammy.
Well, my name is Tammy Wharton, and I'm the CEO of Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland. And many people think of Girl Scouts as cookies, camping, and crafts. But what they don't think about is the things behind that, the skills girls are learning in an all-girl environment. And that's important in this day and age because there's very few places where girls get opportunities to experience things that they might not experience in school and recognize their talents and the possibilities that are out there. And through Girl Scouts, they learn that, and they also learn real skills like problem-solving skills, cooperative learning skills, conflict management. You think about technology today, and girls are behind a screen, and boys. How do they deal with conflict? So those are the things that Girl Scouts does, and it's all through volunteers as well that give support to the girls so that they can be all that they want to be. I sound like the Army.
You do.
That's right.
I'm Yvette McGee Brown, and I'm grown up in Columbus. I'm a former Girl Scout, and I can attest to all the things that Tammy said. I will tell you, not surprisingly to those who know me, I did not get the sewing or the cooking badge, but I did. I did learn leadership through Girl Scouts, and my connection to girls, I think, is having grown up in the Brittany Hills area of Columbus. I saw so many of my peers who didn't make it out, and I credit a lot of strong women in my life who gave me the belief that there was a future that was possible, whether it was my mother, my grandmother, the teachers at Mifflin, who really made me believe that I could achieve. And then with my work on juvenile court as a judge for 9 years, what I often saw are children that got caught in a system of parents with their own issues who couldn't care for them, provide for them, and so they looked for affirmation, love, and affection in different places, which often led them into a cycle of never-ending poverty, whether it was drug addiction or teenage pregnancy. And I've just committed to try to give back and make a difference for those girls that we can.
Good afternoon. I am Teresa Pettis, and I am with Columbus City Schools. I have been an educator for 25 plus years. I stopped a long time ago giving the exact years because the girls figured out my age. But I am very happy to be here. My connection to girls came in a very different way. I was asked to be, or selected to be, the founding principal of the first girls' school with Columbus City Schools. And of course, initially, you're always very proud when someone selects you for such a wonderful honor. But afterwards, I started thinking, what do I know about girls? I am a mother, I have one child, but he's a son. So I was kind of apprehensive, and I've always been a woman with confidence, but I really was very apprehensive about taking on this position. I am so grateful that I did, because I went from having one son to 464 girls, and so that experience has been tremendous. I've learned a lot. I'm honored to be up here with the experts. I haven't been a Girl Scout, but as Tammy and Yvette said, I was a Brownie, and they said that counts, so I'm part of the group. But I don't know if I'm an expert. I do have a lot of experience, so I hope today that I can shed some light on some of the things that I have seen over my years with working with my girls, and perhaps maybe you could be also part of that move as well. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to dig in. For the economic well-being of our girls, Ohio ranked 30th. So we gave you that overall score of 33. Well, we're 30th for economic well-being. Almost half of our African American girls live in poverty. 37% of our Hispanic girls live in poverty. What does that mean they're up against?
Well, they're up against living in neighborhoods where there's poverty, where there may not be emotional support for them as they grow up. Where they, as I had one young woman say to me when I asked her why she got pregnant as a teenager, and she said, well, because I didn't feel like I was interrupting anything. I mean, think about that. She said, you know, your kids think about going to college. She said, I now think about that as a young adult. She said, but at the time, I wasn't thinking that if I got pregnant, it was kind of like, so what? My mom had me when she was a teenager. My sister got pregnant as a teenager, so I wasn't interrupting anything. I think when we have half of our girls, our minority girls living in poverty, we need to have other voices that can encourage them and provide a structure they may not be seeing in their neighborhoods or in their homes.
I agree. And also, when you have girls that are growing up in poverty areas, they know what they know. Their expansion of their knowledge is not far reached of opportunities and experiences as other girls of affluent parents. So what I have found that when you open up doors, and we always say help girls to dream big, but it's very difficult for them to dream big if they can't visualize that. They will get the opportunity of visualizing that if we have people that open doors up to them, give them those experiences, have them see things outside of their everyday neighborhood situations.
And poverty means so much more than just the word. If you think about it, it's their social well-being, it's their emotional well-being, it's their physical well-being, and there's so many things that it's made up of that if someone's living in poverty and they're coming to school hungry, a girl's coming hungry, or she's dealing with violence in her neighborhood, she can't focus on the one thing that can get her out of poverty, and that's education. So there's so many components. We say poverty and we think sometimes let's help a girl by getting her something to eat, but there's so many other services that need to be given to this girl in order to give her that hand up. And I think it also starts with the self-confidence piece. And in fourth grade is when girls start losing self-confidence. I mean, that's a statistic that many of you know. I see heads are shaking. And if they aren't getting that self-confidence, it could be a downhill spiral from there.
The enrichment activities too, one of the things that you have, whether it's Girl Scouts or any other group, it's getting them together with girls where they can share dreams, where they can start to talk about the future and not have somebody laugh about that. You know, when you grow up in an area and you start talking about going to college and there's other kids in your community who have never been to college, they're going to look at you and they're going to tease you and think, what makes you think you can get to college? Giving them some social supports through other organizations where they can meet kids who I like to say are like-minded, who are going somewhere, who are thinking about the future. Because listen, all of us have been teenagers too. And if you're not getting positive affirmation at your home, the first guy that shows you attention and says to you, you're cute, you are there. And so what we've got to do is make them understand that who they are is more than how they look. And it's more than just being connected to a man. And other women can give them that affirmation.
You know, I've heard something, you mentioned something about being a connection point, and just a little anecdote, and we talked about this. I was riding a bus, and there was a little girl and her big sister, and the little girl said to me, "Do you think I'll ever get to New York?" You know, and she was probably about 9. And I said, well, of course, honey. If you dream it, live large, you'll get to New York. And her big sister said to me, why are you putting those notions in her head? And, you know, we had a conversation. And then I gave the little girl my card. I think, and said, call me. If you ever have any questions, if you ever want to just talk, call me. So I guess my question is, does it have to be organized, or does a moment make a difference?
Absolutely.
Mentoring moments, I think, is what we kind of called it when we were meeting together. And I don't think we always realize when those mentoring moments are happening until maybe sometimes long after. I shared with Kristen earlier, I received an email this week from some girls that are graduating high school that I met when they were brownies. And they were sharing some of the things that we spoke of, which I didn't even remember, but they remembered that. And that made a difference in their lives. So I think that each of us has an opportunity to make a difference, whether we even realize we're doing so or not. And that's extremely important.
I agree. On the news the other day, I heard First Lady Michelle Obama make a statement. I think there was a dedication to an art museum. And she stated, one moment, one touch, and who knows how you can spark a child's imagination. I want to change that a little bit to have you think about that. One moment, one talk, and who knows how you can impact a girl's life. So I think sometimes when we think about mentoring, and all of us have the desire to help young ladies, but when we think about mentoring, we think about a large amount of time of commitment. It doesn't have to be that. It could be simple as just having an encouraging conversation. You can see a girl that might be struggling with something. It's opening up to being interested in their passions, helping them to understand no matter how the barriers seem so large in front of them, those barriers can be knocked down. I used to say to my girls, we are not in control of the hand that we're dealt when we are born. But what we are in control of is what we do with that hand. Do we change that hand to other components that helps us to have a more successful outcome? That is in our control. I would never let our girls hide behind the fact that perhaps maybe their parents were not educated, or perhaps no one in their family went to college. So then you become the first. Then you are the one that is the pioneer of your family. So constantly give them those messages. And what girls really want, and because they really believe that adults know nothing, trust me. But what they really want is for you to listen to them. Right. And don't be afraid. And I know you're going to say, no, don't do this. But don't be afraid to share your college experiences. Now, not all of them. There are some things there are some things that they don't need to know, but they need to know that you too had fears about going off to school. You too had fears about certain college courses. You too had fears about, can I do this? Can I graduate? And I see Dawn Tyler Lee back there, and my last year, she said, Mrs. Pettis, I would like for you to be my guest. Dawn used to come up, and she brought lots of people from the community that opened up different experiences for the girls to let them know about various careers. And so I used to always look forward to, Dawn, who do we have next? Who do we have next? And then the last one, she said, I want you. And I said, what, me? I said, the girls don't want to know anything about me. I've been with them, for their whole 3 years. They don't want to know anything. She said, no, I think it'll be fun. So, of course, Dawn, and I said, are you going to give me the questions in advance? And she says, no. And so she started asking questions, and I really started getting into it. And the girls were just mesmerized because they saw me in a different light. So don't be afraid to share those moments.
And especially with your non-children.
That's right.
'Cause I always say that my daughter sometimes is going to understand what I have to offer, although it might
It'll be
take many,
years,
many
yes,
years. So I think that that's also important, that, role models and mentors are so important, and they come in all shapes and sizes and in all genders. I'm pleased to see men in this room.
Yes.
Men need to be included in this conversation as well. You never know when you're going to spark a girl's interest in a career like STEM or something that she might not be privy to, or there's a lot of other ways that you two can be involved. I'm a huge advocate for an all-girl environment so that they are learning and not worried about boys lifting their hands before they do, or answering questions. But I think the men and women alike need to be involved in this conversation.
Absolutely. Because men, particularly for girls that don't have fathers, you can be such a powerful role model for them, and encouraging them and showing them that a man believes in them and give them confidence that they don't have to get from someplace else. The thing is what they see, they need to hear from us exactly what Ms. Pettis said, is that we were once insecure people too. And so that we didn't wake up at 40, right? That we were
Much to their chagrin.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's the sad part. I think they
we've
think I
gone
was
through
old
high
from-
school, right? And it is those moments that to you seem so minor that change the course of someone's life. Somebody saying to you that I believe that you're smart enough to go to college. Just that simple statement can make a young girl think about her life differently and can make her believe that she does have something that might be interrupted.
I think this is a good time to talk about emotional well-being. Ohio ranked 41st for girls in emotional well-being. Now, there are a couple of things that factor into that. Neighborhood violence is one of the factors. And then, of course, the percentage of girls requiring treatment for emotional, behavioral, and developmental issues. So we're going to tackle the neighborhood violence component first. What is happening in Columbus and Central Ohio to combat that you think is good and positive?
Well, there's a lot of programs. One of the things I wanted to check before I came in, you may not know this from reading the papers, but juvenile crime in Franklin County is down.
Yay.
It's down 21%. So one of the things I think we are doing right is we do have a lot of nonprofits that are investing in neighborhoods. Some of our settlement houses, St. Stephen's and in the Milo Grogan area. I mean, there are people that are really engaging with young people. That's the first step. 2 is after-school programs, working with students to keep them off the streets, to keep them in a safe environment. We used to say to our kids when they were growing up, make us the bad guys. If people ask you to do something you don't want to do, say, if my mom and dad find out, I will be so in trouble. Make us the bad guys. Those after-school programs give the kids the ability to say, I can't hang out with you. I've got to be at this program, or I'm going to get this grade, or I'm going to get detention. Create those safe environments, and I think Franklin County is really doing a good job at that.
I agree, Yvette, with your after-school programs. Unfortunately, with the after-school programs comes funding, and so that's where we kind of get stopped with our schools. And we need sponsors and partners to reach out to schools and to the district to be a partner to open up those doors. A lot of the after-school programs, it's not just something to do after school. We have people that really take a genuine interest in our students, and let's talk about girls, and then they basically are monitoring them in their academic progress. And I say all the time, especially for middle school, they can't see the bigger picture. Sometimes they will get that grade just because they want to see the smile on your face. And so that's a reward for them. So after-school program, as Yvette said, is just absolutely magnificent, and it does make a world of a difference.
And I would say that we also need to look at, when we talk violence, the relational aggression, and that's what's affecting girls mostly. When you hear violence, you think of gun violence and crimes against each other, but our girls are facing increases in relational aggression, girl-on-girl issues, and bullying, and that's causing a lot of issues that we're seeing. Increases in the suicide rate. Yeah. And so while it may not be at the magnitude and violence in general may be decreasing, there are issues that we're facing, real issues, and there's a lot of culprits that you could say are caused by that. And it's not just the poverty. I think part of it is our technology reliance.
The brave new world of social
Yeah.
media. And actually, how, that is really a good platform for the next question. How do we emphasize authentic relationships in today's brave new world of social media when everybody is here and doing this? I mean, I've seen kids sitting next to each other, texting each other instead of talking with each other. It's crazy.
Time out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, time
Okay.
out. Put those phones down. Ask your girls to put their phones down and teach them skills that they're going to need to be able to work together. I mean, those are the fine skills that we're losing. You know, schools are doing a great job on the academics. We see, you know, that's a need. But what about those soft skills? What about the skills where they're learning interpersonal skills on how to talk with each other? I mean, not just through technology. Because it's easy to hide behind a phone and say, Kristen, I don't like your dress today. But it's harder for me to look at her and say, Kristen, I love your dress today.
Why, thank you, Tammy.
But I think those are real things, and we don't teach them those interpersonal skills. Conflict resolution. If I don't like you, I can just write it to the world. And you don't realize that that one little message is going to go around, possibly across the world.
Well, one caveat, if you tell your girls to put their cell phones down, you must put yours down.
Yes.
So, you know, our
So
kids,
true.
they learn more from what we do. I mean, last year in Franklin County, we had 7 teenage suicides in Franklin County. 7. Double what we've ever seen in this community. And part of that is our kids, technology is a good and a bad thing, right? Our kids have access to technology that they are not mature enough to use. And so to Tammy's point, what our kids are doing online, how mean they're being, the things that they're saying about each other, some of our kids don't have the strength to process that or to understand that it's a moment in time and does not define who they are. So we as parents need to make sure that we're monitoring our kids' social media. And I mean, I don't know about in your house, but if I pay the bill, you don't own a darn thing. And I'm gonna pick up your phone and I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna see what's happening, because you know, it's not like when we grew up and people called the house. You don't know what messages your kids are being inundated with. And we have to remember too, and I hate to say this, when my son's at school and I hear about a mean girl, I sometimes look at the parent and I'm not surprised that child's a mean girl because she's following in her mom's footsteps. Understand that, you know, we can talk about values all we want, but if they see us being catty, talking about other women, downing them because of how they look, those are the things that they pick up. And we have a bigger responsibility to our girls that we're modeling the kind of woman we want them to grow in and to be. But monitoring social media is hugely important.
You're absolutely right. I can tell you that I'm sure every person, whether it's a teacher or administrator, when you say the word Facebook, they just absolutely cringe. Because Facebook, it's just been almost like the detriment of girls and their growing. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Even girls that are very shy, they will get behind that cell phone and they will start texting things. And what I found with our girls, they don't consider themselves a mean girl. So I had to do a lot during our advisory programs and talk about hurtful things that you say. And even if it's not words, it's how you ostracize somebody. And today you decide that you don't want to sit beside that girl. Because girls internalize that. Boys can shrug it off. You know, okay, so you don't want to sit beside me, you don't want to play ball with me, we'll do it tomorrow, I'll play with somebody else. But not girls. They will really internalize that and they go really deep on what's wrong with me, what did I do wrong that I don't have friends anymore. So I agree with everybody at this panel. We have to do a better job, and I'm saying us, even educators as well, to make sure that we are giving our girls an opportunity to actually talk, not text, to actually talk.
And also dispel some of the, or not dispel, but act upon some of those unconscious biases. Be aware when we are choosing a boy over a girl or not giving her an opportunity. That's, you know, we do it and we don't even think about it. I know it happens in my household. I know it happens in the school. So just an awareness of that is necessary for us to
Well, it's
be
funny you should
successful.
say that, Tammy, because I was at COSI in the district, we had a math challenge. So, I was very excited about that. It was a 6th grade math challenge. And so one of our directors of the curriculum, she asked the groups once they all got together, and they were waiting anxiously to see who came in first, who came in second, even after she said, everybody's a winner. You know how you give that speech, and everybody's like, no, we want to know who came in first, who came in second. So she said, and the one girl said, she was up front, and she was with her team, and she said, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous. And then she said, and then Leslie said, why? She said, I'm just nervous, I'm nervous with the results. Well, there was a young man that was sitting right beside her, and he says, I'm not. I did great. Of course, he didn't win, but it didn't matter because he had that level of confidence. And here, her group did win, but she was so nervous about that. So you're absolutely right.
Well, we focus on the outcomes, and we had a lot of conversations about this before we came here today, and we said, we often praise girls for the outcomes. Were you successful? Weren't you successful? Instead of the process and the successes along the way. And if you fail, oh, by the way, how many times did Thomas Edison and Bill Gates and everybody fail before they were truly successful? And we've got to teach that skill so that the boy that's sitting there, oh, well, whatever, I'll do better tomorrow. That's great, but, we've ingrained this in the girls that they have to be successful straight out the gate, and that's not the case.
Well, don't shoot the messenger. I have to talk about another outcome. Based on the study, Ohio is probably middle of the pack when it comes to education, and there was a staggering statistic, one that really caught my eye because reading is the foundation of everything I do. It's really the foundation of everything everyone in this room does. 35% of 4th grade girls in Ohio are proficient in reading. Just 35%. Why is it imperative that we improve that to empower our young women?
I was also very taken back by that statistic. I thought it was a lot higher than that. But I can tell you it starts with pre-K. And especially when you're talking about in your urban environment, pre-K is valuable. When you think about students who are, children, and especially girls, that are coming from, not just say children, I'm not going to just say girls on this, that are coming from affluent parents. If they don't have the pre-K experience, they have their parents, they have people in their households that are educated that will give them those opportunities, those learning opportunities. I remember going to the grocery store, and I'm sure everybody can attest to this. And my son finally said to his dad, I don't want to go to the store with Mom anymore because everything was a math lesson. You had to figure out, the percentages and everything. So that's what I did. So if you're coming from a household that might not necessarily have those type of values, pre-K is vitally, vitally important. And I'm very happy to say for next year, Columbus City Schools, we are now going to have 44 pre-Ks in our elementary schools.
Yes. That's great.
Yes.
That was one of the measurements in the study, and you could see over the top 5 states that did the best had that pre-K component, or they had an education of families that could give the girls, because this was specifically to girls, give them the education, as you mentioned, whether it be in the grocery store or the home or you name it.
That's right. How do you engage parents to be part of the process of the child's education for parents who might be working 3 jobs, or for parents who they're just not engaged? How do you do that? How do you get them into the fold and get them interested in what this girl is doing?
I think it starts with pre-K. One of the things, and I think Columbus has really been working on this, is making schools more welcoming. So if you think about it, a lot of our parents didn't do well in schools. And so school for them is not a happy memory. And so they don't readily walk into schools. And if they're coming into a school and there are barriers where they're made to feel like they're not welcome or they can only come at certain times, they get turned off and tend to stay away. One of the things we can do is make our schools more about communities. When parents come in, welcome parents in, minimize the formality, let them see their kids in class, don't let them interfere, but let them have a relationship with the teachers and know what's going on in the building. That's one way to engage them in the process and to accept them where they are. Because if they're not educated, if they feel uncomfortable, teachers need to speak to them, not down to them, and not lecture them. Make them a partner.
I agree. We just had a major campaign, Countdown to Kindergarten, and that was last weekend, and thank goodness the rain held off. But we have to embrace parents. From the very, very beginning, you're absolutely right, Yvette. It has to be a welcoming embracement and talk to them as they are people. You know, they are not at the education level that you are, but what they do have is the passion for their children to succeed. They may not know how that's going to happen, but no one wants to have their child fail. So as an educator, it is our responsibility to help them to see those possibilities. And one way to do that is to very early embrace it, to let them know this is going to take a collaborative effort. Everyone has a stake in helping children from pre-K all the way through graduating from high school and on to college readiness or career readiness.
That talks to their self-confidence a little bit as a parent, too. So you think about if, as I mentioned, 4th grade is when you start losing self-confidence as a girl. If you never gain that back, you have parents that are suffering from the same things. So it's really important that we do accept the parents, the caregivers, the mentors where they are. We've had some issues with trying to get volunteers because volunteers, they think leaders need to be perfect and know everything to be a Girl Scout leader. And so we're trying to get the messaging that you don't. It's the imperfect part of Girl Scouts that can be fun and most learning. And again, it's teaching that process, not the outcome.
And can I just add one more thing too, because with the reading, what strikes me is this. Some parents are not good readers, and so they don't read to their kids. If you have the opportunity to be engaged with a young girl, taking her to the library, sharing books that are interesting to you with her is truly valuable. And some parents are embarrassed. They're not going to tell you they don't know how to read, but the reason kids are behind is because if they don't see their parents reading at home, or if their parents aren't reading to them as children, then they get further and further behind. We can help catch them up by just having those moments with them.
So be observant.
Yes, right.
Know what's going on next
right.
door. All right. In a few minutes, we're going to ask people to step up to the microphone with their questions, but I do have one more question for you. We have the CEO of the Girl Scouts here, so I have to ask, how do extracurricular activities factor into the overall well-being of a young lady?
Well, I think Yvette spoke to it earlier. One, it gives girls an opportunity to experience things they may not have otherwise experienced. And my mom used to say, nothing good happens between the end of the school day and 11 o'clock at night.
My dad said that too.
So if you're taking up time with productive activities, one, that alone is going to help out. I think that's important. But I also think that our educators are doing a great job with limited resources in a small amount of hours. So it's those outside hours that we need to really enhance a girl's life. And by doing that with role models and people that are very interested in them, that's how we're going to give them the extra edge, teach them the extra skills that they're going to take on and help them accomplish, and I'm not going to go to the Army again, but accomplish whatever they may dream. And again, maybe sit there and think, wow, I can truly do this because somebody's taken an interest, or I'm working together to get a goal with my friends, and I'm learning how to talk with my girlfriends instead of just on social media. So I think that there's so many advantages to extracurricular activity, and the studies showed that the individual states that had a high extracurricular activities were the ones that were faring much better. So I think all of those components.
I agree.
All right. Thank you, ladies. You're not off the hook yet. It is the CMC's tradition to take audience questions. So what we'd like you to do is please step up to the microphone if you have a question. And we want to thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. Come on up.
So I start with an editorial comment.
All right.
No, but it is a question, and what I want to start out with is a challenge. But first of all, thank you so much for all of you being here. My name's Karen Huff. I'm the founder and CEO of Improv Edge. So if I look across this room, you all look fabulous. I will also say most of us are of a certain age. And the conversation when social media comes up is, oh, isn't it awful? And aren't those children terrible for not talking to each other? So it's not going away, and the world is moving toward gamification. And the more that we think it's terrible, I think the worse it's going to get. And it's actually you talked about embracing. I think it's our job to embrace where the world has gone. It's not going, it's there.
That's right.
And I'd like you to talk about being very open with young teens. Sometimes this is controversial in my neighborhood because I do it. I tell them when kids hurt themselves or get killed because of things that happen on social media so that they can make choices about what really happens. I want them to know the dangers as well as the great parts of it. Do you think that's the wrong take?
I actually don't. I think that social media is here to stay, and we've got to learn how to parent in social media. Because what happens is, because there is social media, we don't always know what messages our kids are receiving, and so I like to call them teachable moments. And what you just described is a teachable moment. When you're sitting with your kid and you're watching something on the news, you're watching something on television, think about a way to engage them in a conversation that will get them talking about whatever happens to be going on in school. It's not going away, but I will tell you, as somebody that works with a lot of young people, we have still got to teach them social skills, because when they go out into the work world, they have to talk to other people. Yeah. They're not going to be able to text. They're not going to be able to text their boss, and so
can I have this job?
and people lose jobs because of social media. They don't even realize, they don't get the offer because they've been so open on social media. It just makes our job of parenting a lot harder, and I'm a 100% proponent of us keeping the conversation going and doing those teachable moments.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations, because as you know, we have a lot of human trafficking out there, and one way how they're luring young girls is through social media. So don't ever be afraid to give them all the, I should say, the caution lights of communicating that way.
And many girls live in a bubble. So in that bubble, they're safe. We've been protecting them, and they don't realize the realities that are out there. So we have to share that so that they understand what's going on. With the suicides, my daughter said, I don't understand what happened. She doesn't drive. And I had to say, I think she took her own life. And it was one of the hardest things I had to say to my daughter, but that didn't even register with her. So I think you have to be realistic in what you share with your children, youth, people that are around you, so that they realize that these are real things happening.
Yeah. I have a little anecdote. When I was 6 or 7, I started reading the newspaper, and my mother would cut things out of the paper that she didn't think were appropriate. So that was that. So imagine how she would be raising us now with social media. I mean, it would. She'd probably yank the computer and throw it out of the house. That said, I loved the fact that she was engaged that way, looking back on it, and even then, she realized I was going to get up before her and read the paper. So
At 7?
Yes, at 7. I was crazy.
She was excelling in the
so
reading
she would get up with me, and we'd go through it together, and she'd explain, this is bad, this is good, and so I think, you have to be hyper aware, hyper aggressive with what your kids are reading, doing. It's much more vigilant parenting these days. I think that's the end game.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Hi, Jane Boyer. I'm a retired teacher, and I'm also a lifetime member of the Girl Scouts.
Yay!
Hey!
I have been since I joined in 1955, and I would like to know, if I were to visit a troop now, what would look familiar to me, and how would things look completely different? Has there been a thread about supporting girls for these 59 years?
Great questions. Yeah. So next year marks the 100th anniversary of the cookie sale. 40th year was this year of Samoas. And what makes that...
That's hard to
Any more useless facts that you want to... the Gold Award, which is named by a couple different things, is also celebrated. Or 2017's the cookies, the Gold Award's 100 years in 2016. I think you'll hear some of the same things that we're doing, the cookie sale, the skills that we're teaching are the same. The way we do it is different. You may not be setting campfires, although girls love campfires. You may not be camping. It may look a little different, but the skills that you learn are the same. And that's the important part of Girl Scouts, and that's the thing that, and other youth-serving organizations, it's the skills that you learn and the ability to try something and fail and try again, that we're losing in some of the pieces that we're talking about today.
And the uniforms are better.
I agree. Yeah. Come on up. State your name, please.
My name is Kathy Lowry, and I am a Girl Scout. I'm also on the Girl Scout board, so thanks for that invitation. I am a member of the Ohio Air National Guard, and my job is as
Thank you for your service.
my position is I'm the Director of Community Outreach for the Ohio National Guard. My question is, for the states that are doing well for the state of girls, Tammy, you mentioned the pre-K and extracurricular activities as two ways that girls were faring well. What other strategies should we be looking at in Ohio to help our girls emotionally or with their reading, or to, oh my gosh, to go from 33 to top 5? What do we need to be doing that we're not doing? Thanks.
I think we should continue what we've been talking about, and I see Edward here with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and we have Project Mentor through Columbus City Schools. It has made a tremendous impact on our students. So mentoring is a big, huge part in helping us young girls grow and develop. So I would say continue with having mentoring programs.
And we've really got to address poverty. The top 5 states have a lower poverty indicator than us. They're smaller states. We have to look at policies that can help move people out of poverty, give them real job skills so that they can get employed, because we know that if households have better income, they can provide better support, both emotionally and physically, for their children.
I would say all those things do go on top of the poverty issue. And it's the educational piece, it's obesity, it's the violence, it's all of those items. So we do have to address that. And as Yvette said, we've got to really work on policies and programs that reduce poverty and help our girls move out of what they might know into what can be. I keep going back to that theme, don't I?
But it's a great thing. Great thing. All right, sir, would you state your name and ask your question?
Yes, I may be a bit of a Victorian because it's a little embarrassing to ask this question, but I'm mustering the courage to do it. Recently, I had the pleasant opportunity to do some child watching for a 12 and 13-year-old. And the 6:30 news came on, and I thought it would be just fine for us to watch the news together. And during the 6:30 news, a rather explicit ad came on for a product.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, in view of the challenges of rearing children today and so on, should there be an age limit or an age requirement for watching the network news at 6:30?
Yeah, you certainly can't cut that out now, can you?
Are there any other issues you would want to comment on that revolve around that? But please don't ask me how I handled it. Thank you.
I think one of the challenges that we see today is that youth in general are being barraged by these messages all over the place. So to think that they're only getting it through the network news is not the case. And I think sometimes, as an older adult, I am naive to think that they don't know about some of the things that they know about. So I think having the conversation when appropriate is always in order, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, and you would think as a parent you should be comfortable talking to your child. However, there's been many conversations that I've had with my daughter and my son on some of those ads that come up. But it's necessary. You got to open the lines of communication, and if you can't do it, find somebody who can.
And sometimes, and this is anecdotal too, when you see something, it's the perfect springboard. What do you know and what don't you know?
Right.
And get the discussion going.
I say get through it however you can. I make stuff up. I'd be like, I can remember those commercials coming on. I'd be like, oh, he just has something that's broken.
right. Would you please state your name and ask your question?
I can't follow that one.
Hi, I'm Barbara Poppy, and I have a more serious question, I think.
Okay.
So recently, the New York Times did some reporting on some big data that had been analyzed that looks at income growth of where children are raised and 20 years of living in a community and what it does. And when I pulled up the Franklin County data, I was actually aghast because, and I brought this up to, is that when you looked at poor kids, they did worse than rich kids, which you know, no surprise there. Except in Franklin County, actually poor boys scored at about 65% of compared to other counties. So that's, you know, we're in the top half with that. But girls, we were at 5%.
Oh, wow.
And so there's a very serious issue of girls being unable to have the kind of earnings that they need just by virtue of the fact they grew up in Franklin County. And so to me, it seems all of the, you know, the interpersonal interventions are really important, and I think that there's lots of good ways to do that. But I guess the question I sit with is, we're going to get a new mayor. Next year, we'll get a new president. Right now, across the street, the State House is debating the state's budget. What would you say to elected officials about what they really need to do to help us solve this really perplexing problem of poor girls here in Franklin County? What are the policy solutions that all of us should be advocating for?
Good question.
Oh, that's a good question.
Who wants to tackle that?
I don't know if I want to tackle that, but as you were speaking, first of all, I'm thinking, ooh, that is staggering information. But I think that what I would say, let's open up our doors for more internships for our young girls. So that's the first thing that came to my mind. What were you thinking?
I guess it's a multi-layered question, right? So the teen birth rate is down, but among black and brown girls, it is still incredibly high. It's 66% for African American girls living in poverty, and it's about 40% for Hispanic girls living in poverty. So there needs to be a reevaluation of what we're teaching and what access we're allowing our kids when it comes to information. So we spend all this time talking about standardized testing, and I can't go into all this, but you know, when we were in school back in the dark ages, you know, schools had a lot more latitude in terms of what they taught. We had health classes where we actually talked about our bodies and about, you know, how to take care of ourselves. And we had classes that explored and opened our minds. We need to get away from all of these, you have to do so-and-so on this test, and teaching to the test, and allow children the ability to think, providing social support for them in schools, providing jobs for their families, so that they see a future. You've heard it over and over again. I don't know if there's going to be big policies coming from the state legislature. I do think that it's going to be incumbent upon us in each of our communities, because kids can't dream what they don't know. That's true. And so the only way we change the paradigm for them, for our girls, is to really give them exposure and give them parents who can meet their needs. And we know if we can keep people from becoming parents before they're ready, they're going to be better parents and be able to support their children. I don't have the macro answers, and we can't do it in the 90 seconds we have, but I think it's something we should all be paying attention to.
And I would turn it back to everybody in this room. One, you showed up because you had an interest in the subject, so thank you for putting girls first or putting them out there. I think sometimes we look and lump youth in general together, and as you see from the statistics, girls are faring a lot worse in a lot of areas than boys are. So we've got to keep the conversation alive, and when the opportunity presents itself, each of you may have the opportunity to bring something forward so that we can change policies and help raise the ranking of girls in Ohio, because it's going to take all of us to be able to do that, and it's got to be a consistent conversation. This is just one of hopefully many to come.
Yeah, this isn't an other thing. You can't say they're going to do it. You have to be part of the process.
We each have to do it. And Barb, just one more thing to your point. You know, we all are in churches, we're in business, we're in soccer clubs, whatever it is. Each of you are interfacing with girls, and if we could each be willing to just, and not, we all are busy, doesn't mean you have to go take a girl for a weekend, but every time you're around her, instead of commenting to her that she's pretty, say, man, what'd you get on that science test? Or that was a great goal that you kicked. Are you going out for the track team? Do those things that put in her head her athletic ability.
What book are you reading?
Yes, right, those kinds of things. When we see girls, we always say, oh, you look pretty. Don't say say that anymore. Talk about who she is.
Yes, good point.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeff Milgram. My wife and I have a son and 3 daughters. And of the statistics, Kristen, that you've been reading, which have been really very sad for Ohio, there's no doubt about it. I think the most important statistic today is one, Tammy, that you mentioned earlier, that I seem to have heard 3 or 4 times over the last 6 months on national news, and that's that most young girls lose their confidence and self-esteem in 4th grade. That's totally unacceptable. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's 9 and 10-year-old girls. And you obviously work with them at the Girl Scouts, and Teresa, it sounds like you work with girls that age as well. What the heck can we do to change that? It seems like that is the crux of the problem here. If that's where they peak with self-esteem and confidence, that's a serious issue.
Wow, I feel like that was like a big opening. Get them involved in Girl Scouts. But we also need adult volunteers too, so if I'm going to do a plug, I'm just going to put it all out there. But I think that there is something to that. Get them involved in activities that are going to help them be successful with role models that they can look up to, whether it be their parent, mother, father. Men can be Girl Scouts. Did you know that? Over 18. I'll stop the plugs, I promise. But getting good role models for them to see, getting them engaged, especially girls, with other girls so that they can be successful together. I think there's a couple, those are a couple things that are so important. It talks back to that extracurricular activities and surrounding themselves with positive role models, and for each of us to do those mentoring moments, whether it be you're going to volunteer for a year, you're going to read with children, or you're just going to have a conversation with someone on a bus.
But, Tammy, besides those positive ideas, though, do we know why that happens? I mean, have there been any studies, or will there be any studies to show why that happens? Is it something in the classroom? Is it, I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of the classroom, media on television, what you see in magazines, but has there been any definitive studies? Obviously, the research was done to know that that's when they peak, but why is that the case?
A big piece of it that we were finding from the studies is the media and the media images of girls. And Yvette hit on this in saying that girls are often told they're beautiful, or they have to hit an ideal, and they are looked at for their looks, whereas boys are being looked at for what they've accomplished.
And they're praised for different things. I mean, what the research has shown is that, as soon as kids come in, we start giving them gender roles, right? And so girls are praised for being pretty and being supportive and being kind, and boys are praised for being rough and getting out on the football field and crashing trucks. And so those messages get into them, and when they get to be about 9 or 10, and I would suggest to you starting to get earlier, you're starting to see at 7 or 8, they start to become very aware of boys. I mean, if you've ever watched the Disney Channel, the Disney Channel has more sexualized images in their sitcoms about girls putting on lip gloss and looking cute for the boy in class. So what happens is those images start getting into their psyche, and they start caring more about how the boys are looking at them versus whether they're, demonstrating that they're being smart in class by raising their hand.
Tell them to cut that out.
And then and then the second thing that I would add to it is, from a marketing perspective, girls want to serve, and they can serve in a lot of different ways. It's just how it's been conditioned for the most part. But girls can serve as a scientist. They don't have to go through and think, oh, a scientist is a person in a lab coat. They can do service and through the STEM fields. And I think that the way we market to girls needs to change as well in order to get them to be engaged in maybe some non-traditional fields.
Sadly, we're wrapping this up. Final question goes to you. Please state your name.
I'm Joanne Goldhand. So to follow on, they lose their confidence, but as Justice Brown said, if they have the time, they can get it back. Mm-hmm. What do you think that we can do to bring birth control back into the conversation and make sure that girls have the chance, they have the time, they understand that they're in control of their own bodies, and they don't need to, or maybe we can require them not to cut their lives short?
I'm going to pass that right to you.
I was going to say, I'm not taking that one. That is a Let me just say this. I agree with you, but that is a policy decision of the State House, and so we'll just leave it there. I mean, really, until we can get women to have control over that, and I'm going to just pass it on to Ms. Tucker. Thank you.
And that comes down to, having a voice in the process. If that's a change you want to see, call your legislators. In covering the news, it's amazing to me to see how many people are passive. This is your country.
Right.
This is your state. And if that's what you believe, make your legislator know it.
And having all girls and women step up with confidence in the values that they believe. And I think that's the key, is you have to put yourself out there for things you believe in. And that's sometimes hard. So I'll leave it at that.
I think we're just about finished. I think these ladies deserve a round of applause. I do have very short closing remarks. I think if there's one takeaway from this forum, it's you don't have to move a mountain to make a difference in a girl's life. It can be a conversation. It can be a note. If it's the conversation on social media or in person, that can be all the difference that brings change to a girl's life. On that front, we have these cards on your table. If you can all hold them up. I want to see you grab them, okay? I commit to whatever and not to be a bystander. This whole process of empowering our girls is about being observant and being a player in the process. So if you could fill these out, and we're going to send them back to you to reinforce your commitment. So just give your information. Your information is safe with us in terms of your address, and we'll get them back to you as that reminder, a little healthy reminder. Thank you for your attention and for your questions and for being engaged in this very important topic about empowering our young women. Have a great day.
And before we conclude, we just want to thank our sponsors, again, Jones Day and the Columbus Dispatch, and our partners, Girl Scouts of Ohio Heartland and the Women's Fund of Ohio, and our lovely speakers. Again, thank you so much for coming.